Alrighty, so if you remember the last thing I was saying in the tokens topic, we have this sea of assets that are floating around in the world of Darrow. That can definitely seem chaotic if you're dealing with an encrypted blockchain and people aren't necessarily publicizing all their stuff. So the next topic is on a piece of software called Gnomon, which to me is the solution to any chaotic views you may have on this model. So what is a gnomon? Does anybody know? Raise your hand if you know what a gnomon is. Okay. And I'm not talking about the Darrow gnomon, like I'm talking about a gnomon. Perfect. In today's modern day and age, a gnomon is often referred to as the geometric shape on a sundial. It's the piece that allows you to see what time it is, essentially, that marks the time that I am here. In ancient dialects, the word gnomon was often used to describe something as a discerner or interpreter, which I think is a pretty sweet word for our Darrow world. So I just wanted to put that in your heads because the folks at Civilware, I think, have very aptly named their products, being Artificer, if you're familiar with what that means. That pretty much sums up what an NFA is. And kind of the same thing with Gnomon here. Gnomon is essentially your guide. It is the tip of that pinwheel that is going to help and show you anything and everything you would like to see on the Darrow blockchain. So to put that into a definition, Gnomon in Darrow is an open source decentralized search engine for blockchain data. It indexes and queries smart contract data and transactions. And you can think of Gnomon as the thing that's going to bring you to what you want on the chain. And that is going to be data, essentially. That is what we're doing with blockchain. We're storing data of things. So if you have a Gnomon, you can think of it as this thing that's just going to show you all of the things that are going on the chain. And when I say bring it to you, I mean that really. It is getting all of this stuff directly from whatever node you are connected to and storing this in a local database on your machine. So you do not have to rely on any third parties to get your data. So how does this work? Let's say I'm over here and this is the Darrow blockchain and I would like to partake in some of these floating seas of NFAs and cool assets. If I wanted to find some of those things, I could start up Gnomon. I will describe it as that for the moment. And Gnomon would essentially scan the blockchain, which is, what we're doing right here. And once it's done that, it creates your local database to use in your DApp for whatever purposes that your DApp may need. To continue on with how this works, I'm sure some of you are familiar with syncing a node. The operation of Gnomon is kind of similar to that. It feels like home to me to use Gnomon because syncing chains is such a familiar thing in my world, I guess, that Gnomon just instantaneously fit in with all of that. So when I say that, you might think, well, sometimes it takes a long time to sync the chain. Do I have to wait to get all of my data, or how does that exactly happen in any quick amount of time? Because we do value a certain level of quickness when it comes to Darrow. That is something we do all want, or else this is not necessarily as usable as it could be and not as beneficial as it could be. So the way Gnomon handles this is a Gnomon service. So just to quickly touch on that, essentially a service on Darrow, we are referring to code performing functions on a machine. So we're not talking about your machine doing what you want. This is somebody performing something for the benefit of others, for the service of others, which is what Gnomon is doing in this representation here. So Gnomon service is looking and scanning the chain just the same as the Gnomon on your computer or your DApp would be. And once it's collected, it stores a copy of that data back onto the chain. So essentially, it indexes the entire chain and makes a stored smart contract that contains that index. So what that allows me to do as the user is when I now go on my computer and fire up my DApp, instead of scanning the entire chain to get all of the data, we can take a look at the contract that is stored on chain and cross-reference it with our local DB if there's one existing. If there's not one existing, we can use this to essentially fast sync a DB. I think most of you are familiar with the term fast sync when it comes to nodes. That is essentially the same terminology that we're using it for here. We're bootstrapping the smart contract data. And it's very interesting that this process can take, if you have a really fast machine, this can take 20 seconds to basically go through the entirety of all the current smart contracts on Darrow and create you a local index that you can use immediately with your DApp. So if you can imagine this concept now of Gnomon scanning, your Gnomon is still scanning the chain when this process happens. So if things come up after that this service hasn't picked up yet, that they haven't stored on the chain or something of that nature, you essentially have the cross-reference to that. The way that I've envisioned Gnomon in my mind is this: with this service, it's almost like the snake eating its tail, like the Ouroboros. It's just kind of constantly going around making sure that I have everything that I need. So that is how the fast sync portion of Gnomon operates. And when it's finished, like we said, you will have your local DB. So if you are curious on how you can use Gnomon, the primary use case for it is for it to be internally used in DApps. That is what Civilware has intended for this thing to be used for. The way I could elaborate on that, and this is definitely in the realm of development that I strive for, I would like all of my things to just seamlessly work with the same set of data. And that is what this package system essentially allows you to do with Gnomon. So if we scale that out across all of the DApps and all of the development on the chain, Gnomon is the tool that helps bring all of us together. It's the tool that Solar and Lunar can all be there together and everything can work the same, whether you're on one side or the other side of that fence. If you're not into building DApps and you just wanted to use Gnomon, there's actually a CLI application in the Gnomon repo that you can use for all of the same functionality that we have talked about here. If you are curious to take a look at that, you can find the Gnomon repo under Civilware's organization on GitHub.